Welcome, welcome one and all. We'll let the numbers tick up for just a moment, and then we'll get rolling. If you're tuning in right now and you immediately recognize what this picture is of, you get me and you get my favorite Netflix show. First person to mention what this is from in the chat wins a prize. Nobody yet? I think Carly has it. All right, so if you're not watching Schitt's Creek, now is the perfect time to start watching Schitt's Creek. It is truly the most remarkable show I've ever watched on television. All right, well, looks like numbers are starting to hold steady. This is officially the largest virtual event we've ever had here at Tulane. So you are now chatting with just about 1,500 students who have all applied to Tulane. Feel free to chat amongst yourself over there in the chat function. We are also available in the chat to answer any questions that you might have. I have three amazing colleagues that are going to be kind of poking around there looking for your questions, not by any means moderating your chat, but if you do come up with any questions throughout the course of this evening, feel free to pop them in the chat. My colleagues Sam, Owen, and Kristen are going to be chatting away there. Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm the Director of Admission here at Tulane. I've actually gotten the incredible opportunity to meet many of you virtually over the course of the last 8 months when this pandemic first started, all the way into today, now that you've applied. Some of you were there for the very first webinar that we had where you got to meet my little puppy Vincent, who's now a full adult grown dog. Maybe you'll get to see him in a few minutes as he makes an appearance. I want to start out by this evening thanking you for applying to Tulane. I know that this year has been absolutely crazy for every single person on this webinar, and the fact that you had the wherewithal and the ability to just reset, refocus, and apply to college in the middle of all this shows a great deal of your character and of your perseverance and of your diligence. And I've said this many times before, but the experiences that you're going through right now, you will be telling your grandkids about. So the fact that you have taken the time to apply to Tulane really does mean a lot to us. And so because of that, we thought we would, for the first time ever, do a webinar called You've Applied, Now What? And so I'm going to be giving you all the best possible information I can, all the best advice that I can, and all the best information that I can for what happens next. As I mentioned, now that you've all had a chance to say hello to each other, if you do have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to pop them in there. We'll try our best we can to answer them. And this evening, we've got a couple different topics that we're going to be covering. The biggest question that many of you might have is, when are you going to hear back? And I'm going to answer that question in the very first slide. So if you must and you need to tune out as soon as you get that information, you certainly can, but I hope you don't, because I've got a lot of other great information that I'm going to share with you this evening. We're going to talk about all the possible outcomes that might happen after you've applied to Tulane, whether you're applying early action, early decision, et cetera. So we'll talk about what can happen next, and also all the best advice that I can give to you after those things happen to you. I'll also give you kind of an insider scoop as to what actually happens when we read your application. So what's going on right now as we delve into all these applications that you've submitted to us and how we make those decisions. I'll also talk about my favorite thing to talk about. If you've ever joined my webinars before, you know I'm a big fan of talking about the act of meditation. You know I like to talk a lot about mental health and remove the stigma from anxiety. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the pieces of advice that I can give to you to just kind of relax and do the best you can to keep your head up through this crazy process that becomes a true rite of passage for every single high school senior around the world. And then we'll talk about what happens next. So what are the next steps that you should be focused on right now? So before we do anything, if you could just take one moment to just pause chatting for 1 second. Now, I know you all like to make fun of me because you feel like I'm sponsored by Calm or one of these meditation apps, but before we even get going, just take your fingers off the keyboard. And with me, I just want you to close your eyes, all right? I promise you we're all still here. The chat's still going to be going when you come back. Close your eyes. I just want you to take a big inhale through your nose. And then exhale. We're going to do that one more time. Inhale. And then exhale. You can do that at any point in time. It goes a long way. Now that we've taken just a moment to breathe, to kind of reset, let's get the big question answered. So when are you going to hear back? So most of you by now know that if you applied early decision, you're going to hear back from us on Wednesday. That's very, very soon. So you only have 2 more days left to have to deal with all of the challenges and the anxiety that comes through all of this. So we'll help you get through that. And then we're really, really excited to announce that we officially will be releasing early action decisions the week of December 14th. We had initially told you all that we were going to have those decisions out by January 15th, but we don't believe that you should have to wait all the way through winter break without a decision in hand. So we are going to work as hard as we possibly can, reading all of your applications as thoroughly as we can, and you will hear from us the week of December 14th. I can't tell you exactly the day of that week that it will be, but it will be sometime that week. And as soon as we know what day it is, you will also be the first to know. So congrats, you're going to hear back from us soon. For those of you early decision, 2 more days. Early action, believe it or not, just about a month, and you'll know if you've been admitted to Tulane or not. So I want to talk about a couple things that we know so far, what we've learned through the applications that we've already reviewed and all the early decision files we've already read. First and foremost, it's really important for you all to know that the number of students who applied test optional was through the roof. So if you did not submit test scores, you can rest assured that the number of your peer students that also didn't submit test scores is very, very, very high. And also the number of students who were admitted early decision without test scores was also very, very high. So I want you to know that all the stress that you've put into worrying about the SAT and the ACT, you can literally just dust your hands of that stuff and not ever have to worry about the SAT or ACT ever again. If you're still contemplating December 5th, I'm not going to prevent you from doing that, but I can tell you now that we've already gone through a full range of reviewing applications, you can rest assured that many, many test optional students have been admitted and many, many, many test optional students have applied to Tulane. Maybe because of that, we also saw an increase in the number of students that applied early decision. It wasn't anything absolutely massively huge, but we did see a slight uptick, and we'll probably also see a slight uptick in the number of students that have applied early action as well. Last year, we admitted roughly 11% of the students overall that applied. But I will also tell you that number was higher for early action and even higher for early decision. As you know, early decision has the highest rate of admission, shortly followed after by early action. We don't know the final rate of admission quite yet. It'll probably be somewhere around that same 11%. But rest assured, we're very pleased with the way things have fallen out. You've got nothing to worry about by not submitting scores. And we're also pleased to announce that we are going to be offering early decision 2. Now, some of you might have heard about early decision 2. Early decision 2 is the exact same thing as early decision 1, but with a different timeline. Here's my biggest advice. Anyone on this webinar tonight has obviously already applied to Tulane. If you've applied to Tulane early action, my advice to you is just wait. Wait it out. You'll get your early action decision from us in December, and the deadline to switch to early decision 2 is January 8th. This is a great option if maybe Tulane's rising to the top of your list over the course of the next couple weeks. Candidly, it's also a good option for maybe some of you out there that have might have applied early decision elsewhere and aren't getting good news from there. Maybe we're your number 2 choice. We're okay with that. But again, you've got plenty of time to figure this thing out. You'll have about 3 weeks in between when you hear back from early action and the application deadline for early decision 2. That's that 3 weeks you're going to want to kind of really think things over, really reset, take a deep breath and decide if we're your top choice. And then of course, most importantly, have the financial aid conversation, because we do offer more financial aid to students who are admitted in other rounds aside from early decision 2. But of course, need-based financial aid will stay the same regardless of when you apply. Okay, so a couple of things just as more kind of housekeeping items. What are the possible outcomes for what you will hear from us either day after tomorrow or in late December? The first and the most thing you would want, obviously, is to be admitted. And that's what we want for everyone. We would love to admit as many students as we possibly can. In fact, the vast majority of students who apply to Tulane are academically qualified to be admitted, but we can't admit everyone. But obviously, the big golden ticket is to be admitted. The other thing that you really do need to be prepared for, specifically I'm talking to my early decision applicants and some early action applicants, is to be admitted as a Spring Scholar. We are now in our 5th year of our Spring Scholar program. And in fact, our Spring Scholars, the very first cohort of that group is now seniors at Tulane. The vast majority of them, over 95% of them, are graduating on time. So it's an amazing opportunity to come to Tulane. Just you start in January. That's the big difference. And the reason we offer opportunities for students to come as a Spring Scholar is because of the thing I just mentioned to you. We have way more qualified students that can do great here at Tulane than we have space available in the class. And so what we do is if we know you're super interested in Tulane, you've applied early decision, but we simply don't have the room for all of these students, we admit a small population of students for spring scholars. Usually it ends up being around 175 to 200 students a year. We have 4 different study abroad options that you will be able to participate in. Our students absolutely love these 4 programs. So definitely make sure you're at least knowledgeable about the Spring Scholar program, and it is a possibility for you. And we'll talk a little bit more about some questions you might have in a little bit. The other thing that can happen, and I'll be candid with you, this is what happens to the majority of our early action students. And that's we're going to defer your application to the regular decision round. And we'll talk about what to do if you've been deferred in a couple slides from now. Good news though, for early decision students, defer is not an option. And that's because we want you to have a final decision from us in 2 days. We don't think it does any good for you to have to wait any longer by being deferred or waitlisted. So the day after tomorrow, you will know if you have been admitted or not admitted. So there is no defers for early decision students. That's only for early action. If that doesn't make sense for early action students, I'll explain in a little bit. The other 2 options, you might be guaranteed a transfer. So what that means is, unfortunately, you're not admitted to Tulane at the time being, but we do offer you the opportunity in a year to transfer to Tulane based on your academic GPA at another school. And then, of course, the last decision is deny. So those are the 5 things that potentially might happen. Obviously, we'll give you a little more information about each of those, but I just want to make sure you're prepared for all the possible outcomes that might happen. Okay, so what happens as we actually read your application? And that's exactly what we are doing right now. The first thing that you already know about Tulane is that we are a school that very much prides ourselves in holistic review, which means every single student on this application will have on this webinar will have their application reviewed cover to cover. We read every single one of the essays you submitted to us. We read all of your letters of recommendation, your counselor's letter of recommendation, because we believe that holistic package is what comes into play, which is why it's not that big a deal to not have your test scores if you didn't submit them, because we have all these other components of your application that we can check out. The most important thing that we look for is your GPA. And I get this question a lot, what about a weighted GPA versus an unweighted? And if I went to different schools, different weighted, the very first thing that happens when we read your application is we recalculate your GPA on a 4-point scale. And we do that so that we can kind of level the playing field for everyone, so that everyone's GPA is similar. Now, it's not just that we compare those numbers to each other. Then we really delve into your transcript and we look to see, have you found the balance in academics? Are you taking the classes you enjoy, and are you doing well? So we do kind of set the stage by recalculating your GPA, but do keep in mind we spend a lot of time looking at that transcript and really investigating where are your strengths and where are your grade trends and how are things going to continue if you're on an upward trend once you get to college. We've already talked about testing versus not. Don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. I can officially say if you did not submit your scores, you are good to go. And then, of course, as you know by now, Tulane is a school that does value the time that you put in to engage with us. Many of you are still living in a very, very virtual world right now. And the fact that you add even more virtual time to your life by coming to these webinars, it means a lot to us. And so I can guarantee you, when we read your application, I'll even know if you came to this webinar, because it makes a difference to us. It shows that you're passionate about this place and that you want to interact and chat with all these other students that are in the webinar. It shows that this is a place you want to be. So again, that's a component that we really do investigate. And so we read all these applications cover to cover. Now, here's what happens when you actually go through the review process. The first reader of your application will be your admission counselor. That's maybe the person that came and did a virtual high school visit. That's the person that when you go on our website and you click, Washington, D.C., you'll see a picture of Owen. Or if you click, North and South Carolina, you'll see Sam. Or if you see parts of Louisiana, you'll see Kristen. And the reason why we are the first reader is because we're the ones that are knowledgeable about your community. We're knowledgeable about the high school that you went to. We might even know your school counselor. We might have been the person that did your high school visit. And so we are the first person to review your application because we have the most knowledge about your background and where you're coming from, et cetera. If you have participated in an interview, and that's also completely optional. If you haven't, don't sweat it at all. We look at all the other points of engagement. We're also going to get some notes from the interviewer. And oftentimes the person that interviewed you is different from the first reader. And that's because we want many different people to have their eyes on your application and hear about your passions. And that's all becomes a part of that holistic review. That first reader will make a recommendation as to what they think should happen with your application. Should we admit this student? Should we not admit this student? Some of those students from that recommended decision will go on to a full committee for review, and some of those students will go directly on to the dean of admission. Now, the dean of admission, the reason why he's the dean is because he's the only person who has the full big picture of all 45,000 of our applicants. So he knows exactly that big picture view, and it's his job to really craft the class. And I mention that because I talk a lot about the difference between what's in your control and what's not in your control. What's in your control is everything that you've done so far and all the things that I mentioned, your grades, your passions, what you've written about in your why Tulane. Then when it comes to the dean, he's got this bigger job and he's got to make sure that he's filling up the class in the way that he sees fit. And that might be some of the stuff that's outside of your control. So we might be looking for, more female engineers. And that's just an example. That's not something very specific. So you don't know necessarily what a school's institutional priorities are. That part of the process, put it out of your mind. You can't control it. Rest assured that whole first process is all the things that you've done. And we're looking for all those reasons that we want to admit you. It's our job to find reasons to admit every single student that completes an application to Tulane. Okay. How can I stay sane right now? Some of you might know David. I feel a sense of kinship with him. I don't know. There's just something about him that kind of, ew, David. So we've already mentioned Calm and Headspace. And I know you all make fun of me because you think I'm obsessed with meditation. I'm a manic dude. Like I am just a mile a minute. I talk really fast. I'm bouncing off the walls. You can ask, particularly probably Kristen. She knows me because she sometimes has the office next to me. Actually, Sam has the office across from me. She knows how crazy I am. And Owen and I have worked together for many years. They all know that I am just like a ping pong of emotions all over the place. And I'm telling you, for me, meditating 10 minutes every morning has literally been life-changing. And you can roll your eyes at me all you want, but I'm going to challenge you. From today, for you early action candidates, from today to the day you hear back from us, I want to challenge you to meditate once a day for the next 6 weeks. It's going to be tough because you're going to feel like you suck at meditation. I feel like I suck at meditation. Honestly, it is hard. My brain is going all over the place. That's why it's called a practice. It never has to be perfect. I want you to try it just for the next 6 weeks. Email me in 6 weeks and tell me if you see a difference in your life. Okay? That's all I ask. I'm not going to say I'm going to admit you if you successfully complete my meditation challenge, but try it. Try Calm, try Headspace. It's worth the money. You can also apply for free Calm by Googling Calm for educators, but definitely try it. It is absolutely going to be worth your while. Now, I think it's really important that we talk about the headspace that we take up and the mental anxiety that this whole process has caused you. And that's why I think this next point that I have here is really, really important. If you cannot control something, can you let it be? And it's a real good lesson for this world that we are living in right now. There are so many things out there that we cannot control. We can control wearing a mask. That is true. But other than that, the world is a crazy, crazy place right now. So there's so much in this world that we can't control. One of the things you can't control is what's going on with your application now. You've hit the submit button. And that's what you should do and leave it there. There's a lot of students that are saying, will it look bad on my application if I've done this? Or is it okay on my application that I've done that? Or should colleges prefer if I do this? Wipe all of that from your brain. And honestly, meditation will help you start to just cut all that stuff out because you cannot control it. It's gone, it's over, it's done. So you have to let it be. I talk a lot about how sometimes we're our own harshest critic. Think about it. If you could control your thoughts, you would only think positive ones. If you could only say to yourself in your head, I'm going to get into this college, I'm going to do great here, then that's what we would always think. But sometimes we allow that negativity to come in. And the last thing I'll say about that is we would never say to someone else some of the things that we say to ourselves in our own brain, some of the negativities that come up, some of the anxieties that we induce, some of the challenges we put on ourselves. If we spoke that way to other people, we would be a real jerk. So when you start to feel that negative talk, when you start to hear those emotions coming in, remember, you don't have to listen to that. You can just let it go. You cannot control it, but you can let it go. I talk a lot about Thanksgiving being a college-free zone because, as you know, if you are having relatives over for Thanksgiving, which obviously the CDC is not recommending that you do that, but Thanksgiving is this time where your aunt and your uncle and your grandma are going to say, "Did you hear back from the school yet?" And maybe you have gotten in, maybe you haven't. It is your parents' or guardian's job to make sure that they set the stage by saying no college talk at Thanksgiving. You don't want to talk about college at Thanksgiving. That's the last thing you want to talk about. You want to talk about stuffing and yams. I would honestly put college above the amount you want to talk about politics, and that says a lot. So let's not talk about college at Thanksgiving. And there's a blog that I'll send out to you all in the next couple weeks that you can share with your parents. Well, they will learn to not talk about this at Thanksgiving. And if any parents are on this webinar, you heard it here first. 3 last choices here. Now would be a really good time to exercise. whether it's walking around the park, but whatever you do, and this isn't just something where it's a lighthearted. I really want you to exercise, like get sweaty, get strong, whatever you have to do. If you're thinking, can you give me an example? If you go to our admission website and you go to our webinars, I don't know if any of you all have done my 1 hour workout class, but that is available on the website. If anyone's done it, feel free to pop it in the chat and tell me if you've done that class. Awesome. It was awful. Ada, that hurts. I tried to work really hard on that one. If you didn't think it was awful, it was actually really tough. Maybe that's why she didn't think it was very good. But definitely check it out. It is very, very, very good to just stay in shape and just breathe and get through this thing and just really, really, really challenge yourself with some exercise. So I'm glad to see some of y'all have done that. Be kind to others. Now is a real time where patience is going to be running thin. You're going to be, you're going to be challenged now. You're going to be emotional now. Take that deep breath. A little patience goes a long way, particularly with your friends, with your teachers, with your school counselors, with all of the people in your life. Just take a moment to breathe and be patient. I know it's tough right now, but a little patience and a little kindness goes a really, really long way. And then lastly, as decisions start to come out, it's really tempting to ask your friends if they got in. I would suggest just waiting and letting them tell you. If they want to tell you, they will. If they're excited about their decisions, they will. But constantly texting all your friends or being in the group chat and saying, "Did you hear back yet? Did you hear back yet?" Not everyone might want to operate in that way. So my suggestion to you would just be let them tell you. If they want to tell you they got in, great. If they didn't tell you, maybe that's a hint that you might not ask them because they didn't get the news that they want. A couple days might pass. They're finally ready to tell you that they didn't get into their top choice, and then you can have your gab session where you watch Netflix and hang out and deal with all the challenges that life's been throwing at you. All right, from David, we move on to Alexis. I love Alexis. There's something about her that's so kind and endearing, and I don't know, she's a really likable person. So I want to talk a little bit about social media and as it pertains to this challenging college application process. I am so thankful that when I applied to college, there was no social media. You didn't know what other people were doing. I didn't have any FOMO because I didn't know about the parties that I was missing out on. And the world that you live in, is completely different because you constantly know what people are up to. You constantly know the fun things that they are and they are not doing. And I honestly think one unintended silver lining of the pandemic is there's a little bit less FOMO. Like pre-pandemic, it was always this big race to show on social media who was having the best time. And now if you are hanging out with other people, you don't want to admit to it on social media. So you're not posting it. So honestly, I think one weird kind of consequence of the pandemic is there's less comparison to each other. There's less, showing off your lives. Now, there's this trend that goes on in early decision and early action. It's when you film yourself when you are getting your admission decision. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. And if you do film yourself and record it and you have that moment of joy, if you do get in, that's great. And that's a video that you will always have, you will always cherish. You can share it with your mom and dad and maybe your grandma and grandpa. If you do that video, great. You're even welcome to send your reaction video to Owen and he'll take a look at it. But we've really started to pull back on sharing those. And that's because for every student that gets in and has that reaction, there's another 9 students that aren't having that reaction. And that's because we only admit 11% of our students. So if you've done the video, maybe you will go viral like that girl last year did. She filmed her video and now she's TikTok famous. But just be cognizant that there's people around you that aren't going to get in. And there's a lot of people that aren't going to get that good news. So just do this with a sense of compassion and know that everyone's had a really, really, really SHITTY 2020 so far. And some of them might end with really high points and some of them might not. So just be kind, just be thoughtful. And really social media, and I've said this on webinars before, social media, I really believe, is you comparing your worst moments to everyone else's best moments. I'll repeat that. Social media is you comparing your worst moments to everyone else's best moments. And that's because when you're on social media, unless you're on Finsta, you're only showing your highlights. You're only showing the thing you rehearse so much, and you're trying to make your life look amazingly happy. And when you're watching social media, you're usually in bed or you've had a rough day. And so you're literally at a low point comparing the high points around you. And so really keep that in mind. And that's why I say take note of your screen time. I am disgusted by the amount of time I've been spending on my phone since the pandemic. And that's because, there are just always opportunities to pick up your phone. Maybe some of you are following Owen's TikToks. Shout out to Owen's TikToks because they're legit. Like, I'm definitely a millennial and I like can't get on TikTok really, but Owen is really crushing it. So certainly watch Owen's TikToks, but at the same time, just take a note of how much time you're spending on your phone these days. It's tied to mental health. Some of you might have seen that Netflix documentary all about it. I can't remember what it was called, Digital Challenge or something. Someone pop it in the chat. It was recently on Netflix about just like the crazy stuff that we're watching on the Social Dilemma. Go watch The Social Dilemma. It'll make you kind of put down your phone a little bit. It's okay to take a news fast. We are so consumed by the news right now, by the election, by the divide in America. Just take a moment to breathe and not constantly read the news. And if you are watching the news, I always recommend, I think Apple News on your phone does a really good job of showing the balance. As we know, we live in a very divided place right now. And I make a point to read the opposing side of what I believe in every single day. And whether I agree with it or not, at least I can see where other folks are coming from. We're a divided place. So taking a bit of break from the news and also making an attempt to read the other side, that can go a really long way. And I mentioned this on my webinars before, and I did have one student email me back on this one. The other challenge I want you to do, 6 weeks meditation challenge, also the 6-week phone away from your bed challenge. And I've talked about this on webinars before. If you're lying in bed and you're about to go to sleep at night and your phone is next to you, the temptation is just to doom scroll and constantly looking to see who's posting their videos of getting into college. Maybe you didn't get in, but just constantly going down that scroll. I mean, you can get lost for hours and all that. And honestly, the biggest change you can make is a small change by charging your phone in a different room. Charging your phone somewhere where you can't read it. So you get ready for bed, you plug your phone into even in your closet or your kitchen. And then you do something else. And here's what I'm going to recommend you do for the next 6 weeks. Read a book. I got back into reading recently, and we're spending so much time on social media. In the chat, if any of you are reading something awesome right now, pop it in there. I just finished reading Born a Crime. I don't know if anyone read, look at all this great stuff. Born a Crime, Trevor Noah's autobiography, is truly the best book I have read in the last 5 years. Go read it. It is amazing. Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. If you've got any other things that you might want to read all these books that your peer students are reading. Honestly, there's something to be said for just sitting in bed and reading a book, getting your mind off the news, getting your mind off the college admission process, and then you wake up in the morning to an alarm clock. I know. Breaking, shocking news. People actually use alarm clocks. And then shower, wake up, and then you check your phone maybe a half an hour to wake up. Do this for 6 weeks. Reach out to me and let you know if this has made a change in your life. I can almost guarantee you it will. It's one small change that can remove the mental anxiety that goes so deep over the course of the next 6 weeks while you're waiting to get your admission decision from us. All right, again, summarizing, if you film their video, feel free to send it to us. My suggestion is to just be thoughtful about posting it publicly, maybe share it just with your very, very close family members instead. All right, moving right along. We did a webinar on Friday, just kind of last minute FAQs, and these are some of the ones that came up quite frequently. So I just wanted to take a minute to go through some of these really, really quick FAQs that are coming in. The first quote that I wanted to, the first FAQ that I wanted to mention here is there a quota? We get that question a lot. Is there a quota from the amount of students that you can admit from a specific high school? The answer is absolutely not. We've said this many times before. You are competing for your spot in the class. You are applying for your spot in the class, which means if there's 10 kids from your school that are qualified to get in, we're going to admit all 10 of them. If you're the first person to apply from your high school in 10 years, you have just as good of a shot if you're a big feeder school. So you're really only applying for your spot in the class. We're never comparing other students to each other and never setting limits to the amount of students that we admit from a certain high school. Will test optional hurt me for scholarships? The answer is no. We will consider every single student who applies for our full tuition scholarships, whether they submit their scores or not. If you do have really strong scores, it can certainly help you. If you don't have scores at all, it will not hurt you. Can I send in any updates? We will receive admission materials anytime this week. So if you have anything that's incomplete from your file, you have this entire week to send it in. So it's a very soft deadline. So if you still have additional transcripts, if you have letters of recommendation, send it in this week and we will absolutely take it. And in terms of updates after that, you are welcome to send in any updates, first quarter grades, etc. I'll show you where to send those in a little bit, but you're certainly welcome to send in things. Keeping in mind, when your application is complete, we start reviewing of it. So if there's anything you want to make sure we get in, and have a view at, make sure you send it in soon because we are already full throttle in application review mode. We get this question a lot. Is everyone from last year taking a gap year? Will that affect me? The answer is absolutely not. This is really important because a lot of students are worried that we have so many more students on the gap year. It's going to totally change who we admit this year. It will not have any effect whatsoever. We have a very, very small number of students in comparison to last year taking a gap year. Previous year to that, it was 36. This year, it's 44. So nothing to worry about there. Do first quarter grades make a difference? Not a huge one, but they allow us to see what your trends are. If you're continuing to do really well, by all means, you can self-report those by sending them in to submit at tulane.edu. And we accept upcoming testing, specifically December 5th. December 5th is a little bit too late to us to guarantee that we can use it. If you can get those scores to us, very, very soon after, we will do the best we can. But unfortunately, that test is a little bit late for us to consider for early action. All right, moving right along. Quick slide here about financial aid. All I'll mostly say is now would be a great time to start applying for financial aid. So start applying. I don't know what applying means, but it should say applying for need-based financial aid. You can go through the financial aid process because we, of course, have prior, which means your family can submit last year's tax returns and still start to be considered for financial aid. Now would be a really, really good time to start applying for outside scholarships. If you are from Louisiana, hopefully you have heard by now about our brand new Louisiana Promise. We are very, very excited about that, to be able to meet full need without any loans for our low and middle income families from the state of Louisiana. Just Google Louisiana Promise to learn more about that. And then tune into our webinar this week. We'll have all kinds of different tips for you that might be applying for the Dean's Honor Scholarship and the Paul Tulane Award. All righty. So for any parents that are out there and for any guardians that are out there, students, this slide right here, have them scan that QR code or scan it with your phone right now. And that's going to take them to a very, very important webinar that I gave just for parents about 2 weeks ago. It was a webinar that you'll really want them to watch because it's helping you out, because it's ideas for how they can kind of get off your back and allow you to kind of take the reins over this process. So make sure your parents are watching that webinar. I think they'll really, really enjoy it. Couple other tiny tips. If you are on this webinar and you are applying to another school early decision, that is totally fine. We want you and support you and we'll be so excited if you get into that other school early decision. And I genuinely mean that. We don't have to be everyone's first choice. If you do get into another school early decision, as soon as you can afterwards, withdraw your application to Tulane. You will literally be giving your spot to somebody else on this webinar if you do. So if you're slated to be admitted to Tulane and you withdraw your application because you got an elsewhere early decision, that literally means we can admit someone else in your stead. So if you get an elsewhere ED, I'm so excited for you. Just make sure that you withdraw your application as soon as you can. I would make a personal request over the course of the next 6 weeks. We are slammed busy right now reading your applications. And the more time that we have to read your applications, the better. So go easy on emailing your admissions staff member over the course of the next couple weeks. Only in an absolute crazy emergency would you email them. I'd really recommend instead using Submit to submit all of your documents, your first quarter grades, and also using the intern's account to ask any of his questions as well, because we really need as much time as we possibly can. Now, the next slide is going to scare you a little bit. And I only put this in here just so you can understand that there's a lot of folks that that really want to go to school at Tulane, but it's challenging to get in here. And I'm not putting this on here to make anyone nervous about getting in, but I'm putting it on here to set the stage that Tulane has become a tough school to get into, which is why we're very proud to practice holistic review, which is why we're very proud to not require testing. And it's why we're very proud to really see how badly that you want to go here as a part of the admission process. But it is important to at least recognize that this Tulane is very different from the Tulane of 10 years ago. This Tulane is very different from the Tulane of 20 years ago. Does that mean that you won't get in? Absolutely not. But it's important to remember that our admit rate has gone down a little bit over the course of the last couple of years. The good news is I can guarantee you the admit rate of the 1,800 people on this webinar is way, 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 way higher than that 11%. Because that 11% includes everyone that's applied to Tulane. By nature of the fact that you're on this webinar, by nature of the fact that you've applied early, by nature of the fact that you even take some time out of your night to come hear us speak yet again, that means that your chances of admission are way, way higher than 11%. But again, we very much value the time that you took to research us. We value the time that you took to do those interviews or visit campus in the middle of a pandemic. Or if you've done neither of those things, the fact that you went to the high school visit that we had virtually. So while this graph and chart start might look scary, I can guarantee you that for the students that are in this webinar, and even those of you that are watching it recorded at a later date, your rate of admission is much, much higher than that. And that brings me to my last couple of slides. So what happens if you get in? Well, as David said, I feel like that needs to be celebrated. If you get in, that's freaking awesome. Like, congratulations. You should celebrate. You should be so proud of your accomplishments. You should really feel like, 2020 is ending on a high note. But also, as I mentioned before, be cool. Because there is going to be a large population of students, not only that it doesn't get into Tulane, but that doesn't get into the school that might have been their top choice. So, temper your excitement with a sense of compassion and humbleness for those around you that might not be experiencing the same highs that you are, and know that their highs might come later on. And life has a way of kind of going high and low and high and low, but none of that challenge and that pain will last forever. And so, for your friends that aren't getting in, just make sure you show them that thoughtfulness and compassion that can go a long way. We welcome you to join the Facebook group, even though we know that nobody even uses Facebook anymore, but it's the easiest way for us to get to all of y'all together. We know you have all kinds of different group meets already. We know you have all kinds of different groups already. That's great. Keep it going. With the Facebook group, again, this is going to be you comparing your worst moments to everyone's best moments, because you're going to pick your favorite pictures of yourself and talk about how you want to go out and be social, but also want to, focus on your grades. Everyone does the same stuff. It's okay. The thing is, don't overthink the Facebook group. We have a lot of students that look at the Facebook group and they're like, wait, I'm worried I don't fit in with these people, or I don't want to be that party much. I'm not partying at all. Is this what everyone's like? Don't read too much into the Facebook group. Don't stress out about roommates. Don't stress about all this. Owen and I talk about this a lot, about that Facebook group. It's a great chance for everyone to show off, but don't put too much thought into it. I'll have some blogs that'll be coming about that in a couple weeks. If you're admitted early decision, obviously it's a binding contract. So that's why you want to make sure that you're reading through your financial aid opportunities as quickly as you can. The only way that you can pull out of early decision is because of financial reasons. And of course, we understand that we would never force you to come here if you don't have the financial aid that you need. For early action, of course, you have all the way until May 1st to make up that decision. So take some time, figure it out. If you're comfortable visiting campus, you can. We've got all kinds of great admitted student programs that will be happening in the next couple months, and we'll tell you about those soon. If you're admitted for the spring, same as above, celebrate. You've been admitted to Tulane in what will probably be the most competitive year we've ever seen. So yeah, it's awesome. You should be really, really happy. And I don't want you to feel like you've not been admitted. If you are admitted as a spring scholar, a couple things to remember. First, it removes you from the binding contract. So you are not bound to be a spring scholar if you are admitted for the spring. You have all the time you want till May 1st to make up that decision. It is not a binding contract. But it cannot be changed to the fall. Now, I want to repeat that. It cannot be changed to the fall. I want to repeat that. It cannot be changed to the fall. Unfortunately, we just don't have the space to take any of our spring scholars in the fall semester, but we are so excited to be able to admit you for the spring. Again, talk to any of our current spring scholar ambassadors. They can tell you all about the incredible experiences that they had abroad, but do keep in mind, it's not something that can be changed to the fall. If we didn't change it to the fall for the current spring scholars attending in the middle of the pandemic, I can promise you we're not going to change it next year. So again, celebrate, know you got some time to figure it out, resist the urge to just email all these questions. There's so many resources for spring scholars available on our website. Check it out. You can definitely get all the information you need. In a couple weeks, if you got some more questions, let us know. Now, I don't usually include this. I've actually never included this slide in any of my presentations before. And I know some of you might tune me out for a little bit, but hear me out on this slide here. And this is a slide about how to stay admitted. I posted a blog last year. You can Google it. It's how to stay admitted. So Google Tulane, how to stay admitted. And this is pulled directly from the blog. And I know I've been kind of joking about a couple things throughout this course, this presentation, but this slide is really, really important. And this is an escalating level of importance for why I would rescind admission to someone. And I won't go through all those, but what I can tell you is the number one reason why I rescind admission is because of really stupid stuff that students have done on social media. Honestly, I mean, if your grades take a dip second semester, it happens. I know senioritis is out there. I've even had students that have had, social issues in some social events off campus. And even that is something that to me is not as a big of a deal, is when students do really, really cruel stuff on TikTok. So just after you're admitted, in this crazy divided world that we are living in that has a lot of challenges, just be kind. I know I've talked a lot about that, just being kind, being compassionate to others. We will never look you up on TikTok. We are never trolling for you. 100% of the time, someone will screenshot what you did. So again, you're probably thinking this will never apply to me, and it won't. So just, be thoughtful, be cool with each other, be kind. I promise you this will not be a problem. But again, it is the number one reason why I rescind admission. And so I'm telling you this now so that you kind of prepare and be good people over the course of the next couple months. So what happens if I'm deferred? So a lot of students that apply early action are going to be deferred, and that's totally normal. Students get deferred every year. Every single year in the last 5 years, we've admitted students after they've been deferred. So defer is not a deny. It just means that we need some more time before making a final decision on your application. So it's not a no, it's more of a not yet. It's more of a we're not sure yet. And what it almost will always come down to is numbers. We don't defer any student that we don't think would be able to be academically successful. That would not be a smart thing to do. Instead, we defer students because we don't know if we have enough room to admit all these students to Tulane. So it's almost always going to come down to numbers. So if you are deferred, you can rest assured that you're qualified to be admitted. We just need to wait and see if we have enough room to admit some deferred students. If you are deferred, a couple of tips I have for you. First is let the dust settle. So oftentimes, when somebody is deferred, the very, very next day, I'll get an email saying, I got deferred last night. I really want to let you know that I'm still interested. But sometimes I get students maybe that'll wait a week or 2 or 3, and they'll say, you know what, I've taken some time to think about this. Maybe I meditated a little bit. I've let the dust settle, and I've really realized that Tulane's become one of my top schools. I've heard back from all of my other early action schools, and I want to let you know that this is definitely one of my top choices. So when we release admission decisions, it's tempting to want to email us over winter break. Like I said, let the dust settle, reach back out to us in January and re-engage with us. We're going to send a form to you that basically says, hey, do you still want to be considered in the regular decision round? Fill out that form and we will give you every possible consideration that we can. A couple last tips that are on here as well. You can consider early decision 2. Early decision 2 does have a higher rate of admission than students that are deferred from early action and stay in the deferred pool. That doesn't mean that you don't have any chance, but it means the rate of admission is a little bit higher for early decision. And like I said, that might be if Tulane rises to the top of the list, if you've not gotten good news from another early decision school. But again, do make sure you're talking with your family about financial considerations. If you choose not to go early decision 2, totally fine. Send in some important updates if they are new. So if you've got a really big extracurricular activity that's super new, you can send that in. Maybe if you didn't complete the Y Tulane the first time around, which I'm assuming everyone did, but if not, you can send that in. You're welcome to send us some additional information, and maybe one email to your admission counselor over the course of the next couple weeks can go a really, really long way. But this is a great opportunity to remember a lot of this is all about how we just breathe and how we don't just respond really quickly to this thing or react really quickly. Instead, we just take a moment to let the dust settle, reach back out to us, engage with us. That can go a really, really long way. Then this is a tough one. What do I do if I don't get in? The first thing that's important to remember is the difference between responding and reacting. Reacting is the knee-jerk reaction. It's just, there's something wrong with me. You might call the admission office and ask what was wrong with your application. There is 99% of the time nothing wrong with your application. And there are very rarely going to be something we can point to as to why you aren't admitted. And that's why it's important to remember that you should never let yourself be defined by the college application process. If you let your whole 2020 end on this note of getting in or not getting into college, or if you let your whole spring semester of your senior year, which is already going to be disrupted by everything we're dealing with right now, if you let it be again defined by the college application process, you're never going to be in that mental headspace that allows you to move on. And remember that there's these things that you can't control. And that's why it's important to remember, if your application is denied, it's your application that we're denying. We're never denying you as a person. It's not like we ever read your application and there's something we don't like about you. We're denying your application for admission into our class. And a lot of times, the reasons why we deny you are out of your control. It might be a numbers game, or it might be just a reason why we can't admit that student. So don't let it define you. And remember, you're not getting rejected from college. We are denying your application, but we're not denying you as a person. And it's almost always going to come down to those numbers. It can be really, really tempting to compare yourself to others. And you can say, they only got in because of this, or these students from my high school got in and they don't even really want to go there. Or she only got in because she's, an alumni, or even worse, a person of color. Those are the types of things you never want to think or say, because it's never going to do you a service. It's never going to do your peers a service. It's never going to help you breathe and move on and realize there are these things in your life that aren't in your control. We've talked about that. If you can't control it, can you just let it be? Can you pull yourself back up in the new year, try again, start over somewhere else? And that's exactly what's possible. And that's why I always mention, for me, that's exactly what happened to me when I applied to college. First of all, I'm not sure if I would have been admitted if I applied to Tulane today. I probably would have, because I felt like I was a really, really good fit here. But the reason why I think it's important to kind of think of all these opportunities and outcomes is to take that step back and realize that, these things in life, they do have a way of working themselves out. And if you've ever come to any of my webinars before, I oftentimes love to end with my story about Tulane. And if you've been to the one webinar I gave kind of at the beginning of this process, where I gave you all those tips for the college application process, I'm going to repeat this story now because I think it really comes full circle. First of all, we talked a lot about your mental headspace. Right now, I think it's important to just be knowledgeable about all the possibilities, whether it's getting in, not getting in. Once you've realized that you know what the possibilities are, then you use that positive train of thought. I go back to, we can't control what we tell ourselves, but we can control what we listen to. You've got nothing to lose by having a positive attitude. You've got nothing to lose by saying, you know what, this can happen. I could get in. Yes, you know that the options are out there for you to not get in. We've all discussed that. But now, moving forward for the next 6 weeks, plug your phone off of your bed somewhere else, do a little meditation, read some books, be kind to your family, don't talk about college at Thanksgiving, and go into it with that positive attitude. What's the worst that can happen? You go into it with a positive attitude and you don't get in. That's no different from going into it with a negative attitude and not getting in. So that mental space, that taking a breath, that realizing that you've got this, you're going to do great. Whether it's at Tulane or elsewhere, you are going to do great just by nature of everything that you've been through so far this year. And that's why I put this picture right here. Puka shell necklaces were really big in 2001. And that's me in my puka shell necklace. This is me stepping onto Tulane's campus as a very, very first time freshman. Now, my story is a little bit unique, and some of you guys have mentioned it, might have heard this story before. But when I was your age, literally at this point in your life, I was waiting to hear back from UNC Chapel Hill. And I've not mentioned the school before, but I'll go ahead and mention it right now. I really wanted to go there. It was my top choice. I applied early. I visited. My sister went there, and in my head, I had told myself it was UNC or nothing else. And I didn't really have that opportunity to think that it might not happen, or I didn't have the opportunity to think that there's a lot of options out there. So UNC was it for me. And shortly after I applied to UNC, they sent me the very thin envelope in the mail. And that was my letter of rejection. And, for me, it was this moment where I was just like, that's it. I'm never going to college. I felt like this wasn't fair. The system was rigged against me. And I'll even admit it. A couple of days later, my dad called the admission office at UNC to just see what I could do better when I applied to other schools. So maybe your dad shouldn't do what my dad did. But it took me a while to just reset and breathe and realize that, this process was going to have a way of working itself out. And the reason I tell that story is twofold. One, even directors of admission get rejected from college. It happens. Everyone out there will probably get rejected from some school somewhere, and that's normal. That's a part of this process. But then I went to Tulane. And for me, it was not my top choice, but it ended up being the absolute perfect fit for me. And I had 4 incredible years as a student here, and it was really the perfect match for my undergraduate experience. And now I'm sitting here as the director of admission from that school that did admit me. And I always end with this quote, and I put a little Rose family, end to it all there. I'm a firm believer that everything will be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. Like I said, there's 1,800 students that have tuned into this webinar, and many of you all will get into Tulane, way more than 11% that I mentioned. And some of you won't, and that's okay. But I can promise you that whether you end up at Tulane or elsewhere, you have been through a hell of a year this year, and you're coming out on top. And you might not come out on top right away because it might not be the top school that admits you, but you will find your footing. You will find your place. You will breathe, and you will get through this. I promise you will find that place that will be your perfect home for the next 4 years. It might be Tulane. It might not be. If it is Tulane, congrats. I look forward to seeing you all in the fall. Please do feel free to connect with each other. Share your Instagram name, share your TikToks if you want to do that. I know Owen and Kristen and Sam have been trying to answer some of your questions as you've gone through that. I would normally end my webinar by saying, email me if you have any questions, but all of us are literally doing nothing but reading your applications. So we really like to be able to focus on that, but do take advantage of our student interns. They are there for you as a resource. Take a deep breath. You're going to get through this. I promise you it will all be all right in the end. Thanks a lot for tuning in this evening, y'all. I'll let the chat keep going for a little bit while longer while I turn off my video. It really does mean a lot that you were here this night. Good luck and roll wave. Thanks a lot, y'all.